Good morning, friends. In the previous class, we had a discussion on directive principles of state policy, right? So we have discussed all the important articles from Article 36 to Article 51, right? So this was our previous class. Coming to today's class, let me start the class from the topic of fundamental duties. Let me start the class from fundamental duties which are enumerated in Part 4A of Indian Constitution. So, the class for today, it starts with this topic of fundamental duties, right? So, remember, if you take these fundamental duties which are mentioned in Part 4A, it was added to Constitution by 42nd Amendment Act. This Part 4A is added to Constitution by 42nd Amendment Act in 1976. Right? So, on the recommendations of Swaran Singh Committee. Alright? So, though this chapter of Part 4A was added to Constitution, but originally these fundamental duties are mentioned as a part of fundamental rights. Remember, no Constitution provides absolute rights. No Constitution provides rights without duties. No Constitution provides rights without duties. So, every Constitution, right? So, every written Constitution which provides rights, so wherever there are fundamental rights, along with fundamental rights, right, there will be duties. So, rights and duties are inseparable. That means rights and duties cannot be separated. So, always remember this point. So, wherever there are fundamental rights, duties are a part of this fundamental rights, right? So, we cannot separate fundamental rights from duties, right? So, that means duties are present in Part 3 of Indian Constitution. So, remember, we have discussed about Article 19. Of Indian Constitution. We have discussed about Article 19 of Indian Constitution. Alright. So, if you take this Article 19 of Indian Constitution, right, we all know about this Article 19, that is Article 19 provides specific freedoms. That is, there are specific freedoms mentioned in Article 19 of the Constitution. Article 19 of Indian Constitution. Okay. But these freedoms, when you look at this Article 19 Class 2, provides certain conditions. Article 19 Class 2 provides certain conditions, right, wherein which the individuals should follow these conditions in order to enjoy the freedoms. So, if a citizen, right, want to enjoy the freedoms, the conditions mentioned in Article 19 should be respected, should be followed. So, this is a condition. So, if you take these conditions, so I have discussed all these conditions, but once again I am reminding. If you take these conditions, right, the conditions includes here are, right, respecting sovereignty, unity, integrity of this nation. So, if there is any violation to unity, integrity or sovereignty of the nation, then it is a ground for imposing restrictions. Alright. So, restrictions are imposed when these conditions are violated: maintaining public order, maintaining public morality, decency, contempt of court. So, these are different conditions which are mentioned in Article 19 of Indian Constitution. So, following these conditions is a duty. So, these are not just conditions. right? The conditions which are not mentioned, the conditions which are mentioned in Article 19, they are not just conditions, but they are also our fundamental duties. Don't you think that, right? Respecting unity, integrity, promoting unity, integrity and sovereignty. Don't you think it as a duty of the citizens? Don't you think it as a citizens' duties? Definitely yes, they are duties of citizens. That means what? Freedoms are given on one side, the same time along with the freedoms there are also duties given. So both duties and freedoms are clearly mentioned in Indian Constitution. Both duties and freedoms are mentioned in Indian Constitution. You cannot separate. We cannot separate these duties from rights, right? And it is these duties which acts as a grounds for imposing restrictions on the rights of individuals. That means if these duties are violated, then there can be restrictions imposed on rights of individuals. Very, very important point to note. All right. So we can say that duties act as a limitation, right? Duties act as a limitations, particularly those duties which are mentioned in Part 3 of the Constitution. Those duties which are mentioned in Part 3 of the Constitution, they act as a limitation. They act as limitation on the part of. They act as limitation on the part of fundamental rights. That means fundamental rights can be restricted. Fundamental rights can be restricted. All right. So this is, all right, we should remember. All right. So though Part 4 was added in 1976, but originally even the framers of Constitution, right, they have clearly provided duties in Part 3. But coming to Part 4, the purpose of adding a Part 4, right, the purpose of adding a separate chapter on fundamental duties is only to enlighten, is to bring consciousness, right, among the citizens of the Indians, right, among the citizens to know about their duties, right. Say for example, respecting flag, respecting anthem, abiding by the Constitution, following the spirit of our freedom struggle, right, following the ideals given by our freedom fighters, all right, then promoting scientific spirit, right. So these are duties. These are some of the duties mentioned in our Part 4 of the Constitution. So in such we have 11 duties which are mentioned in Part 4A of Indian Constitution, right. In Part 4A we have 11 such duties. There are 11 such duties which are mentioned in Part 4 of Indian Constitution. All right. So coming to exam point of view, every candidate is required to by heart all these 11 duties. Just read the list of fundamental duties which are mentioned in Lakshmikant, or you can also refer what you call the duties mentioned in NCERT class 11, right, Indian Constitution at Work. So you can find these duties, right, just by heart them, just by heart list of all these duties, right. So now, right, in order to legally enforce these duties, that is, Justice Verma Committee was constituted, right. Justice Verma Committee was constituted. Justice Verma Committee was constituted, right. So VERA on the issue of legal enforceability. On the issue of legal enforceability of fundamental duties, right. So according to this Verma Committee, not all the duties are legally enforced. Not all the duties are legally enforced, but there are certain duties which are legally enforced, right. Say for example, all right, respecting national anthem, respecting national flag, right, following the spirit of Constitution. So these are the some of the duties which are legally enforced, right. I'll use simple example. Today it is mandatory. It is mandatory to respect national flag and national anthem. So whenever a national anthem is played, right, wherever and whenever a national anthem is played, it is the duty of every citizen to sing national anthem. So non-singing of national anthem, right, non-singing of national anthem, showing of disrespect to national flag, it is a ground for imposing restriction on fundamental rights. That means, right, the liberty of individual can be restricted. State has every power to impose restrictions on this fundamental rights. This was clearly held by Supreme Court in 2014. In 2014, Supreme Court clearly said that, right, non-singing of national anthem is a ground. Non-singing of national anthem is a ground for imposing restrictions on the rights of individuals. Right? That means there are duties which are legally enforceable. Right? Say for example, promotion of scientific spirit. It is a duty of every citizen to promote scientific spirit. Right? But it is a duty wherever possible, whenever possible, for the individual citizen, they should take steps. To promote this scientific temper. But it is not legally enforceable. Protection of wildlife, rivers, lakes, forests. It is again a duty mentioned in what you call Part 4A. It is a duty, and there are laws, right, which prescribe punishment for violation of these laws. Say for example, we have Forest Conservation Act, right? So we have conservation of rivers, lakes, all right. The projects like Project Tiger, Project Elephant. So all these are the initiatives. Which are meant to protect wildlife, rivers, forests. And if it is violated, there is a punishment. So this is again a legally enforceable duty. It is again a legally enforceable duty. Right? So coming to these duties, there are duties which are legally enforceable and there are duties which are not legally enforceable. So Justice Verma committee has recommended, right, legal enforcement of certain duties. Alright. So this is about the topic of Part 4A. Alright. Next, moving on to, alright, I think I am clear about this Part 4A. So just remember, from exam point of view, remember the entire list of fundamental duties. Remember the entire list of fundamental duties, right? So it is important for exam. Normally, if at all a question is to be asked, question will be asked either on the list of fundamental duties or the relation between fundamental duties and fundamental rights, right? So analytically, questions can be raised on the relation between fundamental duties and fundamental rights, right? Factually, if a question is to be asked, simply on the list of fundamental duties, right? Let us now move towards the next topic, that is the next topic of polity, the procedure for amendments. The procedure for amendments or amending procedure, which is mentioned in Article 368 of Constitution. Of Constitution. So coming to weekend exam on polity, the exam will be on directive principles of state policy, fundamental duties and the entire topic of amending procedure and emergency provisions, right? So coming to weekend exam on polity, it will be on directive principles of state policy, fundamental duties, amendment procedure and emergency provisions. Alright. So this is the topics. These are topics for weekend exam. Okay. Now coming to topic of procedure for amendments, right? So if you take Indian Constitution, already we have seen the nature of amendments, right, in the salient features. So if you take the nature of amendments to Indian Constitution, if you take the nature of amendments to Indian Constitution, right, we have described Indian Constitution as a rigid and flexible constitution. We have declared Indian Constitution as a rigid and flexible constitution, right. So this is the kind of description. So already we have what you call described, right. So when we have discussed the topic of salient features, when we have discussed the topic of salient features, right, we have mentioned that we have concluded that, right, Indian Constitution is both rigid as well as flexible. That means we have different procedures. We have different procedures for amending Indian Constitution. For amending Constitution, we have different procedures, right. Say we have different procedures. Say for example, there are, right, Indian Constitution can be amended by ordinary laws. Changes can be brought. What do you mean by amendments? What do you mean by amendments? So amendments means it is changes. So Indian Constitution is an organic constitution. We regard Indian Constitution as an organic law. Indian Constitution is an organic constitution or organic law. So what do you mean by this organic law? What do you mean by this organic constitution? A constitution that can be changed, right. So that means it keep on evolving. Indian Constitution evolves according to the changing situations. So we don't have a rigid constitution. The framers of Indian Constitution has not provided any rigid constitution. We are being given a constitution which can be adopted, which can be changed to the changing situations, right. So it can be changed according to the situations, according to the aspirations of people. Remember, when we call it as situations, it is the changing aspirations of people. That means there can be additions that can be made, there can be deletions. So we can change by adding or by deleting, right. Say for example, we have seen right to property as a constraint for the goal of welfare state. We have seen right to property being a hurdle, right, in the way of achieving the goal of welfare state, in the way of achieving the goal of welfare state, right. So as this what do you call right to property is a hurdle, what has been done? As right to property is a hurdle, what was done is, right, we see this right to property being removed from the list of fundamental rights. That is the organicness of Indian Constitution. If required, we can change, right. If required, we can add. We see, right, different rights being added to the list of fundamental rights. Changes being made to other parts of Constitution. We have added the what you call the third tier of Indian government, that is the local governments. So to the changing needs, to the changing aspirations, changes can be made to Indian Constitution. That is the reason why we call Indian Constitution as an organic constitution. Indian Constitution as a living law. It can be changed according to the changing conditions. It can be changed according to the changing conditions, right. So that is what the nature of Indian Constitution. So we don't have a static constitution. We don't have a static constitution. So Indian Constitution changes. It can be altered, and it can be altered by ordinary laws also. It can be altered, right. It can be altered or changes can be made by following the procedure given in Article 368. So changes can be made by ordinary laws, or changes can be made by following the procedure given in Article 368. So any change that is brought according to Article 368 or all the constitutional amendment laws or amendments made by following Article 368 will be regarded as true amendments. They will be called as true amendments. So true amendments are those amendments, right? So any law that is passed according to Article 368, it is these laws which are called as constitutional amendment laws. It is these laws which are regarded as constitutional amendment laws. Constitutional amendment laws are simply constitutional laws. Right? So constitutional laws are those laws which are made in accordance with Article 368. Any change that is brought by following Article 368 will be treated as a constitutional law. Right? Then what about changes made by ordinary laws? They won't be called as constitutional laws. Changes brought by laws outside of Article 368 or changes brought by ordinary laws, they won't be called as true amendments. They won't be treated as constitutional laws. Right? So always make a difference. Always make a difference between these 2 points. So what are constitutional laws? Right? And what are the changes made which can't be regarded as constitutional law? Right? So changes brought by ordinary laws will not be treated as amendments. Changes brought by using Article 368, they are treated as constitutional amendments. Right? So now let us examine. Right? Majority provisions of Indian Constitution. Majority provisions of Indian Constitution, they can be changed by ordinary laws. Right? So the majority provisions of Indian Constitution, majority provisions of Indian Constitution, they can be altered by following by ordinary laws. By ordinary laws. Say for example, in the previous class we have seen citizenship laws. Alright, creation of states, laws dealing with electoral laws, say change representation to People's Act, electoral laws. Right? So these are, I am just giving the examples. Alright. So these are the provisions that can be changed by ordinary law. So what do you mean by ordinary law? So when we talk about ordinary law, ordinary law is that law which is passed by simple majority. Ordinary law is that law which is passed by simple majority. Alright. So we have seen in Article 2, in Article 3, right? So these are the laws which are made by simple majority. We have seen that different changes being made to citizenship. Right? But all such changes are made by simple majority. We have seen changes made in 87, 1992, then 2004. So all such changes are made by simple majority. That is the reason why they are not regarded as a true constitutional laws. Alright. So this is one way of bringing changes to constitution. Now coming to Article 368. Alright. There are provisions of constitution which can be altered by parliament alone. Alright. So say for example the topic of fundamental rights, or you can take DPSPs or preamble, These are the some of the subjects, right, which can be amended. So which should be amended by following the procedure given in Article 368, right. So I'll talk about this procedure, but remember these are some of the subjects, right, which requires the procedure of Article 368, all right. So here Parliament alone can bring changes. Parliament can alone bring amendments to the Constitution. So that means without the requirement of states, without the requirements of states, or without the participation of states, without participation of states, without the participation of states, all right, Parliament alone can bring changes to Constitution, all right, that is by passing a law with special majority. So here Article 368 talks, prescribes special majority. So a constitutional amendment law is that law which is passed by following the procedure of Article 368, right, procedure of Article 368, where that is a law that is passed by special majority, a law that is made by special majority. In case of what you call ordinary law, it is simple majority. Here in this case it is simple majority, but now it is special majority, changes brought by special majority, all right. So here let me give the meaning of special majority. According to Article 368, constitutional laws should be passed by special majority. Special majority means 2/3 of all the members present and voting. 2/3 of all the members present and voting. So to pass a constitutional law, it requires presence of all the members. And within this it requires a 2/3 majority. All right. So this is the majority that is required. Right. So special majority means 2/3 of all the members present and voting, right. So to pass a constitutional amendment law, all right, it requires a majority of 2/3, right. And there are certain cases. So here Parliament alone is passing the law, but there are certain cases or certain subjects where there is a participation of states. So here in this case there is no participation of states. But coming to, there are certain subjects which requires participation of states, right. Let me talk about this. If any changes are to be made to the subjects of President, Vice President, Supreme Court, High Court, Center-State relations, then amending Article 368. Say, if changes are to be made to the election of President, powers and functions of President, or election of Vice President and powers and functions of Vice President, right, any changes to powers and functions of Supreme Court or High Court, right, any changes to center-state relations, or amending Article 368 itself. So to amend these subjects, right, a law need to be passed. A law need to be passed in Parliament. A law need to be passed in Parliament by special majority. By special majority. A law should be passed. A law should be passed in Parliament with special majority, and the same law should be ratified by at least half of the states. Right? The same law should be ratified by at least half of the states with simple majority. With simple majority. With simple majority. So this is the procedure that is required. Right? So a law should be passed in Parliament with special majority, and the same law should be ratified by at least half of the states. So it is not all the states, at least half. That means if half of the states accept, then it is okay. The bill will be passed. The amendment will be made. So here it requires ratification by at least half of the states. Half of the states with simple majority. And remember, the majority that is required here is simple majority. In case of Parliament, it is special majority, and in case of states, it is simple majority. So these are the subjects. Right, where amendments can be made by passing a law both in Parliament as well as in at least half of the states. So if you compare, right, or if you look at this amending procedure, so there are three different ways. There are three different ways of amending Indian Constitution. There are three different ways of amending Indian Constitution. So amendments made by ordinary law, amendments made by Parliament alone with special majority, and amendments brought by Parliament as well as at least accepted by half of the states. So these are three different ways of amending Indian Constitution. But majority portion of Indian Constitution, they can be amended. Majority portion of Indian Constitution can be amended by ordinary laws. They can be amended by ordinary laws, right? So this is what you should know. So here, still now we have not went into the procedure. We have just discussed, right, different ways of amending Constitution. So why Indian Constitution should be regarded as a rigid Constitution? It is rigid because there are provisions which requires participation of states. Why it is flexible? Because Parliament alone, Parliament on its own can bring changes either by ordinary law or by a law passed according to Article 368 without the requirement of states. Right? The difference between rigidity and flexibility, lies in this aspect. It lies in the aspect of what you call participation of states. It is called as rigid because it requires participation of states in certain subjects. It is called as flexible because Parliament without the requirement of states can make the amendments. Alright. So this is the difference between rigidity and flexibility. I hope you have understood. If you have any doubts, please do ask me, and the one who are in online, please do comment if you have any doubt. Right? If you have understood, say yes. Right? So give me the comments. Right, regarding this topic. So have you understood or not? Okay then. So take down a question in this regard. Why Indian Constitution is regarded as rigid and flexible constitution? Why Indian constitution is regarded as rigid and flexible constitution? Why Indian constitution is regarded as rigid and flexible constitution, and what are different ways, and what are different ways, and what are different ways of amending constitution? What are different ways of amending constitution? Right. So whatever we have discussed till now, right, it is the answer for this question. Right. So we have discussed three different ways. We have discussed three different ways of amending constitution. We have discussed three different ways of amending constitution. Okay. Have you noted the question? Have you noted the question? Okay then. Let me now go to the procedure as mentioned in Article 368. Let me go to the procedure. Procedure mentioned in let me go to the procedure mentioned in Article 368. Alright. Remember, any changes to constitution can be made only by passing a bill to this effect in the parliament. That is, by passing a constitutional amendment bill. Correct. So now who will declare whether it is a constitutional amendment bill or not? Right. Who has the power? Who has the power to determine the nature of bills? Who has the power to determine the nature of bills? Neelaveni has asked a doubt. Alright. So what we should write about rigid and flexible means. Alright. Just now I have discussed what do you mean by what constitutes rigidity and what constitutes flexibility. Rigid means it is with respect to participation of states. It is with respect to participation of states and role of states in the amending procedure. We have seen, right, the states involvement, or there is a limited involvement of states only in certain aspects, but majoritarily it is a parliament alone that will make the amendments. So flexible means it is parliament on its own or parliament alone making the changes, whereas rigidity means at those aspects which requires participation of states. Right. So based upon this, write the answer over rigid and flexible means. Right. So now, it is now who will determine the nature of the bill? Who will determine the nature of bill? Whether it is a constitutional amendment bill or not. Whether it is a constitutional amendment bill or not. Remember, it is the Speaker of Lok Sabha. It is the Speaker of Lok Sabha who has the ultimate power to decide on the nature of bills. Right? So though a bill is introduced by a member or by anyone, but still it is Speaker of Lok Sabha. Speaker of Lok Sabha has the power to certify the nature of bills. Certify the nature of bills. Right? So the ultimate power lies with the Speaker, which cannot even be questioned in Supreme Court. The certification given by Speaker The certification given by Speaker on the nature of bills should not be questioned even in Supreme Court. Supreme Court in Aadhaar case. Supreme Court in Aadhaar case in 2017 has clearly said that the decision of Speaker is final and no one has the power to question the decision of Speaker on the power to certify the bills. So, it is the Speaker of Lok Sabha who has the power to certify the nature of bill, right. So, normally the one who introduces the bill, right, he will the person who is introducing the bill will simply declare the nature of bill and it will be certified by Speaker, right. So, the bill, a constitutional amendment bill, right. So, simply I will use a shortcut, that is CAB. Constitutional amendment bill can be introduced in either house of parliament, can be introduced in either house of parliament. Can be introduced in either house of parliament. That means it can be introduced either in Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha. It can be introduced in either Lok Sabha or in Rajya Sabha, alright. And here to introduce a bill, no need to have any permission, no prior permission of President is required. That means there is no need to have any prior recommendation of President of India. That means a constitutional amendment bill can be introduced in either house of parliament without any prior recommendation or any prior permission of President of India, right. So, this is what we should remember, alright. So, a constitutional amendment bill can be introduced without the permission of President of India, okay. Now, it can be introduced by any member of the house. That means it can be by a minister or by an ordinary MP. So, all such bills which are introduced by an ordinary MP, that means a MP who is not a minister, make this point clear, an MP who is not a minister, it can be introduced by either by a minister or an ordinary MP. So, these are called as private member bills. The bills which are introduced by ordinary MP, they are called as private member bills. They are private member bills, okay, right. So, if you take this introduction, it can be introduced without the permission of President and it can be introduced by any member, that is need not be a minister. So, either a minister or even a non-minister, that is ordinary MP. All such bills which are introduced by ordinary MPs, they are called as private member bills. They are regarded as private member bills, right. Make sure, right, make it very clear, right. So, these are the first three steps. Now, going to the next step. After introduction of the bill, there will be a debate, discussion, and voting. There will be a debate, discussion and voting on the bill. Now, is there any time limit fixed to pass a constitutional amendment bill? Is there any time limit fixed to pass a constitutional amendment bill? What is your answer? Is there any time limit fixed to pass a constitutional amendment bill? Remember, in our constitution, there is no time limit fixed on any bill, not only on Constitution Amendment Bill, not only on a Constitution Amendment Bill, on any bill, there is no time limit fixed by Constitution. So, in our Constitution, there is no time limit fixed. There is no time limit fixed on the Constitution Amendment Bills, right? So, it is up to the House to take the time. They can take any amount of time. They can take any amount of time to pass these bills. But the majority that is required, alright, is special majority. So, to pass a constitutional amendment bill, it requires special majority. So, what do you mean by this special majority? A majority of 2/3 of members present and voting, right? So, it is a majority of 2/3 of all the members. So, this word is very important. 2/3 of all the members present and voting. 2/3 of all the members present and voting. So, this is the majority that is required. This is the majority that is required to pass a Constitution Amendment Bill. Alright, this is the majority required to pass a Constitution Amendment Bills. Right? After passing in the first house, the bill will be sent to the second house. So, after passing in the first house, the bill is transferred, it will be sent to the second house. Alright. So, remember, there is some technical terms here. There are certain technical terms. First house is always called as originating house. First house is always called as originating house, whereas second house is called as investigating house. So, don't get confused when you see these terms, originating house and investigating house. The first house is called as originating house and the second house is called as investigating house. So, be clear of these terms, okay. So, after passing in the first house, the bill will be sent to the second house, right. So, there can be every chance, right, the second house, alright, the second house may accept the bill. The second house can accept the bill, or it can reject the bill, or it can withhold the bill. Right? It can accept the bill, it can pass the bill by special majority. It can reject the bill outrightly. It can reject the bill, it can withhold the bill. So, there can be any chance, on this bill. Accepted or rejected or withholding, that is simply tabling the bill, simply placing the bill without any discussion or without any voting. So, no discussion or no voting will be done on this bill. We call it as withholding. Withholding means simply tabling the bill. Withholding means tabling the bill. Alright. So, without taking any decision. Without taking any decision. Without taking any decision. Alright. So, that is called as withholding. The second house can accept, it can reject, it can withhold the bill. Right. So, if the bill is accepted, think that the first condition, if the second house, so if second house accepts the bill, that is, if second house passes the bill by special majority, by 2/3 majority, then the bill is deemed to be passed. So this is the kind of terminology that you should use in the exam. The bill is deemed to be passed in both the houses, right? The bill is deemed to be passed by both the houses, and it will be sent to whom? It will be sent to President for his assent. It will be sent to President for his assent. This is the first condition. Second condition, if it is rejected, then what? If it is withheld, then what? Now there are two conditions, right? That means first house passing the bill and second house rejecting the bill. First house passing the bill or second house withholding a bill. In both these cases, the bill is deemed to be ended. It will bring an end. In this case, that is in the second case, the bill is deemed to be ended. It will bring an end to the bill. First house accepting the bill and second house clearly rejecting the bill. So it will bring an end to the bill. That means there won't be any further process. There won't be any further process in passage of the bill. There won't be any further process in the passage of bill. Alright. So this is the second condition. In case of third condition, it will lead to either end or lapse of the bill, depending upon the originating house. Depending upon the originating house, either the bill will end or the bill will get lapsed. Right? So these are the outcomes. These are different outcomes. If it is accepted, it will be sent to President. If it is rejected, it will bring an end. If it is withheld, either it will end or it will lapse, depending upon the originating house. If the bill is passed in Lok Sabha and introduced in Raj Sabha and sent to Raj Sabha, in such case, right, it will bring an end. There are different conditions, but remember, I will discuss this when I talk about Indian Parliament, right? Indian Parliament and the status of bills when Parliament dissolves. In case of dissolution of Parliament, so what will be the status of bills which are all pending? The status of pending bills, right? So it is a different story. So I will discuss this when I teach the topic of, say, Parliament. But as of now, remember that, right? In both these cases, we see either lapse or end of a bill. All lapsed bills, remember, all the lapsed bills, they will be carried forward. They will be carried forward into the next Parliament. Alright? So I will explain that. But here, there is one thing. So both B and C, the second and third condition, they denotes a disagreement. Remember, one house want to pass the bill and the second house doesn't want to pass the bill. So one want to pass and the other one want to reject. It is a case of disagreement. It is a case of disagreement. It is a case of conflict between the two houses. Right? It is a case of conflict between two houses. And whenever there is a conflict between Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha, whenever there is a conflict between the two houses, how these conflicts are resolved? So do we have any constitutional mechanism, right, to resolve the conflicts between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha? Do we have any such mechanism? To resolve the conflicts between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha? Can anyone of you, do you have any idea about this? Do you have any idea about resolving conflicts between Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha whenever there is a conflict or whenever there is a disagreement? I want even the people who are in online, just please do respond. So do we have any constitutional mechanism to resolve these conflicts? In case of disagreement or in case of fight between Lok Sabha and Raj Sabha, how they are resolved, how these conflicts are removed? Just Just think and give me the answer. Okay. So we used to have, we have one instrument, that is joint session. Joint session, that is mentioned in article 108. So this is very important article, again important. This is one of the important constitutional provision, that is article 108. Right? Joint session, which are normally meant to remove conflicts. But in case of constitutional amendment bills, this joint session is not available, right? So there is no place for no joint session is allowed. No joint sessions are allowed in case of conflicts between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha in constitutional amendment bills. That means under Article 368, joint sessions are not allowed. That means if there is a disagreement between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, it will bring an end. To the constitution amendment bills. In case of conflicts between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right, with respect to passing of constitution amendment bills, right, it will bring an end. It will put a full stop. On this process. There won't be any other movement. There won't be any further movements, right? It is just simply an end to the bill, right? So this is, right, the role within the parliament, right? So now coming to the first case, that is the bill that is passed in both the houses of parliament by special majority. Remember, right, as I said, there is no case for joint session. Remember that a constitution amendment bill should be passed in both the houses separately. A constitution amendment bill should be passed in both the houses. Separately. So as there is no joint session, right? There is no chance of any resolutions. So this constitution amendment bill should be passed separately by special majority. It should be passed separately by special majority, right? So this is one thing that we should remember, right? Now coming to the role of president. Whenever a constitution amendment bill is sent to President of India, do President of India has any veto powers? That is, whether President of India can use vetoes, right? So already we have discussed the meaning of veto. So if you recollect the previous 1861 Act, Indian Councils Act of 1861, previously we had a discussion on this. Veto means the power to reject or overriding powers of Viceroy, or it is overriding powers of President of India. Remember, under Article 111 of Indian Constitution, the President of India is given this veto powers. President of India enjoys veto powers. Right? So if you take this veto powers of President, right? So whether these veto powers can be applied on Constitution Amendment Bill, that is what the issue. Now what is your answer? Whether President of India can use veto powers on this Constitution Amendment Bills? Yes or no? You say yes, no. Remember, the President of India, the President of India cannot, the President of India cannot use veto powers on Constitution amendment bills. The President of India cannot use veto powers on Constitution amendment bills. Right? So veto powers are only with respect to ordinary bills, but not for Constitution amendment bills. Alright? That means whenever a constitutional amendment bill is sent to President office, alright, whenever a constitution amendment bill is sent to President office, President of India is bound to give his signature. President of India is bound to give assent. Assent means signature. So President of India should give his signature. He is bound. It is compulsory. It is mandatory for the President of India to give his assent. He cannot reject a constitutional amendment bill. He cannot use any kind of veto powers on constitutional amendment bill. So President of India should give his assent. Alright. So this is the status of a constitutional amendment bills. So President has no choice. President has no choice but to amend, but to give his assent. So this is the role of presidents. So though the bills are introduced without prior recommendation of president, though the bills are introduced without the prior permission of president, but still president is bound to give his assent. President is bound to give his assent. So this was made compulsory by 24th Amendment Act. If you recollect the 24th Amendment Act, changes are made to Article 368. If you take this 24th Amendment Act, changes were made to Article 368. So this is what the change brought. Right? Indira Gandhi government by 24th Amendment Act. Indira Gandhi government by 24th Amendment Act, right, made it compulsory for the president to give the assent. All right. So this is, all right. So this is a procedure for amending the constitution. Right. So this is the procedure mentioned in Article 368. If at all a question to be asked, all right, the questions will be raised either on this procedure or the questions will be raised on basic structure of constitution. All right, the questions will be raised on basic structure of constitution. All right. So let me once again revise this procedure for amending the constitution. Okay. So a constitutional amendment bill can be introduced in either house of parliament. All right. It doesn't require any prior permission of president. It can be introduced by any member of the house, including a minister. All right. Then after introduction, there will be a debate, discussion and voting, and the majority that is required to pass a constitutional amendment bill is a special majority, that is a 2/3 of all the members present and voting. After passing in the first house, the bill will be sent to second house, where coming to second house, the second house can accept, it can reject or it can withhold the bill. All right. Next, all right, if it is accepted by both the houses, it will be sent to president, and where president is bound to give his assent. In case of rejection or withholding, there won't be any joint session. That means the bill should be passed compulsorily in both the houses separately by special majority. In a simple way, the bill should be passed in both the houses separately by special majority to bring the amendments. No joint session is allowed. Right? So these are different steps in amending the constitution. Am I clear or not? Am I clear on this procedure or not? Alright, so take down a question on this point. Take down a question in this regard. Explain the procedure. Explain the procedure. Explain the procedure for amending Indian Constitution. Explain the procedure for amending Indian Constitution as mentioned in Article 368, as mentioned in Article 368, as mentioned in Article 368 by using Supreme Court judgments, by using Supreme Court judgments, alright. So now you should get a doubt. So till now we have not discussed any Supreme Court judgments, but the question is about discuss the procedure by using Supreme Court judgments, alright. So what kind of cases you will use? So here I won't give the answer. I want you to give the answer. Even the people who are in online, come on, give me the case studies, case laws. Previously I have discussed this elaborately. So just give me 2 or 3 cases. What are that landmark cases, right, which had an impact on power of Parliament to amend the Constitution? Previously we have discussed some of the cases, right. Now I want you to give that cases which are regarded as landmark judgments. Landmark judgments on amending powers of Parliament. Let me see how many of you give. Keshavananda Bharati. Alright, okay. A.K. Gopalan. It is not A.K. Gopalan. A.K. Gopalan is not about amending powers of Parliament. A.K. Gopalan case is about what? Restrictions on fundamental rights. The concept of procedure established by law. It is for that. Alright, it is for procedure established by law, judicial review, alright, restrictions on fundamental rights. It is for that A.K. Gopalan case is known for. Alright. I have always asked you to remember 2 important cases. One is Golaknath versus State of Punjab case. Golaknath versus State of Punjab case. So one is Golaknath versus State of Punjab case, and second one is Keshavananda Bharati case. These are 2 important landmark cases. Keshavananda Bharati. Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala case. Keshavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala. These are 2 important cases. Alright. So before Golaknath case and after Golaknath case. So before, what is the position? Before this, Parliament had the power to amend the Constitution. Parliament can amend Constitution by using even ordinary law. But here, after this case, Parliament cannot amend the Constitution. Parliament cannot amend the Constitution. That is, Parliament has no constituent powers. That is what Supreme Court said in Golaknath case. In a Golaknath case, Supreme Court held that. In Golaknath case, Supreme Court held that Parliament has no power to amend. Parliament has no constituent powers. Alright. So this was the judgment. Alright. But in Keshavananda Bharati case, what Supreme Court said? Parliament has the power. Parliament is sole institution. Parliament is sole institution to amend the Constitution. Parliament is sole institution to amend the Constitution. Alright? But there is a condition. But without violating of what? Without violating basic structure of Constitution. Without violating basic structure of Constitution. But without violating basic structure. So we have a doctrine of basic structure of Constitution. So without violating this basic structure of Constitution, Parliament can amend any part of Constitution. Alright? Without violating basic structure of Constitution, Parliament has the power. Parliament has the power to amend any part of constitution. That means the highlight of this case of the Bharati case is right the innovation of doctrine of basic structure. Doctrine of basic structure. And what is the impact of this doctrine of base structure? What is the impact of this doctrine of base structure? Whether judiciary, whether it led to judicial supremacy or parliamentary supremacy. I want you to give the answer. Right? What is the impact of basic structure? Whether it led to judicial supremacy or parliamentary supremacy. Whether it led to judicial supremacy or parliamentary supremacy. Alright. So remember good. I have seen some of the answers getting in. I'm getting some of the comments. Good to see the comments. So it led to judicial supremacy. Alright. So the doctrine of basic structure led to judicial supremacy. That is, now judiciary can. It led to judicial supremacy. That means what? Now judiciary has every power. Now judiciary has every power to review the laws made by parliament. Judiciary has every power to review the constitutional amendment laws. And if required, right, it can review the constitutional amendment laws. So there can be judicial review. Alright, the impact of this doctrine is, the impact of doctrine of basic structure is, it led to judicial review. It has empowered judiciary. So there can be judicial review of constitutional amendment acts. Alright, and if required, right, and if required, if they are against to constitution, if they are against to this basic structure, if these constitutional amendment acts are against to basic structure, what judiciary can do? It can simply nullify them. Nullifying. Right? If these constitutional amendment acts, against to against to constitution, simply they can be nullified. So Supreme Court has every power. Supreme Court has every power to nullify any constitutional amendment act if it is against to constitution. If it is against to the constitution. Alright? So that is what judicial supremacy is. That is what judicial supremacy is. Alright? So the doctrine of basic structure, which was given by Supreme Court in Keshavananda Bharati case, right, it led to judicial supremacy, which has empowered judiciary to review the laws made by parliament, the acts made by parliament, and if required they can be simply nullified, right. So if you want to write an answer, at least you should quote these two cases when you are writing answers on constitutional amendments, right. When the question comes on constitutional amendments, definitely, right, you should use both Golaknath case as well as Keshavananda Bharati case. You should use both Golaknath and Keshavananda Bharati case. Am I clear to you? Am I clear to you on these points? And it is up to you to use another case, because we have seen K. Shankar Prasad case, we have seen Sajjan Singh case, then we have seen what you call Raj Narayan case, right, Mineral Mill case. So we have seen many cases, but these are the two important cases that you should use. So before Golaknath, after Golaknath, and after Keshavananda Bharati case, right. So the question which are given earlier, right, do use these case studies, which are important. Alright, and if you take the landmark amendments made to Indian Constitution. So whenever we talk about landmark amendments made to Indian Constitution, automatically, we think about 42nd Amendment Act because it is very, very important. It is this landmark case, and this 42nd Amendment Act is called as this 42nd Amendment Act is called as mini constitution. It is called as mini constitution. So why it is called as mini constitution? Any guess? Why it is called as mini constitution? Why 42nd Amendment Act? Why 42nd Amendment Act is called as a mini constitution? Why it is called as a mini constitution? The reason is every part of Indian constitution is altered by this 42nd Amendment Act. You take anything, you take preamble, fundamental rights, DPSP, central state relations, president, the powers of states. So every chapter is being affected or influenced by this 42nd Amendment Act. Alright, that is the reason why 42nd Amendment Act is regarded as mini constitution. Alright, 42nd Amendment Act is regarded as mini constitution because of this reason. It is called as mini constitution because of this reason. Alright, so this is what about 42nd Amendment Act, 44th Amendment Act, another 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts. Right. So these are some of the landmark amendments made. So if you take 73rd and 74th, so what is the purpose of 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts? What is the purpose of 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts made? The one who are in online not giving the answers. Right. So do try to give the answers. Alright. So 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts. So what is the specialty of these acts? So these acts have provided local governments. They promoted the intention of this 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts is to promote grassroots level democracy. The purpose is to promote grassroots level democracy. That is providing of local governments or local bodies. That is the reason why we regard 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts. We regard 73rd and 74th Amendment Acts as what you call landmark amendments. Good, Neelaveni. Alright. So these are some of the constitutional amendments. Take down another question on this nature of amendments. Take down another question on this nature of amendments. Alright. If you take this nature of amendments, debate on constituent powers of Parliament. Debate on constituent powers of Indian Parliament. Constituent powers of Indian Parliament and compare it with constituent powers of Indian Parliament and compare it with constituent powers of British Parliament and compare it with constituent powers of British Parliament. Constituent powers of British Parliament. and compare it with constituent powers on British Parliament. Alright. So, this is what about powers of Parliament. Sorry, the nature of amendments, the procedure for amendments. I think I am clear about this topic. So, do you have any doubts on this issue of procedure for amending the Constitution? Any doubts? Any doubts on procedure for amending the Constitution? Any doubts, even the one who are in online? Do you have any doubts on this? Okay then. Okay then, we move on to the next topic, that is emergency provisions. Emergency provisions. Emergency provisions. Remember, what do you mean by emergencies? What do you mean by emergency? What do you mean by emergency? What does emergency mean? So, emergency means unforeseen conditions. It is unforeseen conditions. Emergency means it is unforeseen conditions, right? So, our constitutional makers, right, the framers of Indian Constitution, they have clearly visualized different types of this unforeseen conditions, right? They have visualized different types of emergencies. That is, 3 types of emergencies are mentioned in Indian Constitution. One is national emergency. One is national emergency, which is mentioned in Article 352. National emergency is mentioned in Article 352. Second one is state emergency. Second one is state emergency, that is mentioned in Article 356 and you can also Article 365. So, this state emergency is popularly called as President rule. It is popularly called as President rule or state emergency. Alright. Next one, alright, the third one is financial emergency. Alright, a financial emergency. Financial emergency, which is mentioned in Article 360 of Constitution, right? So, in this chapter, we will try to understand these 3 types of emergencies, the conditions, right, which makes to impose these emergencies, the effects of these emergencies, right? So, under what conditions these emergencies are imposed and what are the effects of these emergencies, right? So, we will discuss these topics in this chapter of emergencies, right? But right, for now I will stop the class here. In tomorrow's class I will complete this emergency provisions. In tomorrow's class I will complete emergency provisions, right? Once again I am repeating, for weekend exam I know that you are feeling it difficult because there are too many things to revise. So, you have so many topics. So, for a new candidate it is not that easy to complete all these topics. Even I know the practical problem of the candidate, but still I want you to try, because when you start answering MCQs, you will come to know the nature of questions that will be asked. You will come to know how to mold a point, how to twist a point, how to revise. when you see some line, when you see some textbook, or when you read notes, right, you should know how to read it. You should know how to read it, and you should know how to mold that points. All right. So at least try your level best when you're right. So if it is not possible to complete the entire syllabus, do focus on one or two topics, because for this weekend we have DPSP, fundamental duties, then we have emergency provisions, then provisions for amendments. So almost 4 topics, and it is very lengthy for you. All right, it is too difficult for you. So if you are not able to revise all the 4 topics, read 2 topics, be comfortable in them, but try to attempt the exam. All right. So if you keep on writing the exam, then you will come to know. All right. So I always stress on this practice, because I know the importance of practice. All right. So we have, if you take today's class, we started our discussion with DPSP, then we have completed fundamental duties, then we move towards procedure for amendments, right? Right, and we had just a glimpse of national these emergencies, right? So this is what we have discussed in today's class, right? And remember, by 11:15, I will start an interaction on political science optional. The interaction session on political science optional will be at 11:15. All the interested candidates, it is not compulsory for all, the one who wish to take political science, they can attend the session, right, and clear your doubts. So coming to our polity class, I'll make an end to this class now. We'll meet tomorrow at the same time of 9:30, right, with another topics. So welcome back. In this session, I'll talk about the pros and cons of political science optional for UPSC mains. So coming to the features of this course, remember the entire course will be completed within 250 hours. That means at maximum 250 to 300 hours of class, where you will be given the notes. The entire class notes will be given to the candidates, and along with that there will be video recordings. So whoever want to revise or listen the class once again, so you can have video recordings, and there will be a weekend test. There will be a weekend test conducted on the topics which are completed in that week. That means every topic that is taught in the class will be tested. So at least there will be 10 questions. At least there will be 10 questions that will be asked by weekend, and we expect every candidate to write the exam. Alright, and coming to the guidance. So remember, this guidance will be available. So even after completion of the class, the entire guidance, mentoring. So once we complete the class, there will be daily tests. So after completion of syllabus, you can have daily tests as well as weekly tests. So there will be both daily tests and weekly tests. Alright. So that means the focus will be more on practice. Alright. And it is available both online as well as offline. It is available both on online as well as offline. Alright. So, and these optional classes will not be live streamed. They will not be live streamed. Alright. So it will be conducted on Zoom. So all the interested candidates, they should download the Zoom, alright, and classes will be on Zoom app. Right? The reason for choosing Zoom app when compared to other apps is, in other apps there is no facility of interaction between the student and teacher. That is, the students can't talk with the teacher, you cannot talk to me, you cannot answer, right? At maximum there is only a choice of using chat. To take any other apps, it is only chat that is allowed, but coming to Zoom, we can have both interaction as well as chats, because I don't like to teach for a machine. I love taking classes to students, but not for machines, right? So that is the reason why I have decided to take the class on Zoom. Alright, so the interested candidates who want to take political science, just please do download the Zoom app. Alright. So these are the basic highlights of this program. Now let us go to the syllabus of this political science. Syllabus of political science. So if you look at the syllabus, alright, paper 1, alright, syllabus of paper 1, which deals with political theory and Indian politics. So you have two sections, section A and section B. Section A is about political theory. It includes both political theory as well as political thought, right? Section A contains both political theory as well as, right, political thought. Right? Again in thought we have Western thought and Indian thought, that is Western political thought and Indian political thought. Right? So in section A, right, we will learn the basic things of politics, such as political science, such as political ideologies, right, liberalism, Marxism, Fabianism. Right? So we have different feminism, we have different types of political ideologies. Right? So it is these political ideologies which acts as a basis for understanding different concepts. It is this right, it is these political ideologies that will act as the basis for understanding different concepts within political science. Say for example, theories of state, alright, state theories. So again, to understand the state theories, we will try to, right, we will use different ideologies or we will use different theories, right, and each theory has their own exponents. Every theory has their own exponents, that is every theory has been supported by different thinkers, right. That is, we will try to understand, right, the ideologies and views given by different thinkers. Right? Say for example, the concept of justice, right, the concept of state sovereignty, right, the justice, the concept of equality, rights, right, democracy, power, hegemony. So all these concepts, because, right, these are different concepts, these are different issues that we will discuss in political theory. So different views are political theory of rights, different views of rights, Marxist views, state views, pluralistic views, right, feminist views, right. So liberal views, idealistic views or idealistic theory, right. So we will try to understand, we will try to apply different theories in understanding all these concepts. Right? So what is justice and what is justice according to different theories and different views. Right? So theory of justice with a special reference to John Rawls theory of justice, and the concept of justice according to Marxian view. Right? That is communitarian critics. Right? Same thing about equality, rights, democracy. So if you look at these topics, so these are the topics that you even see in polity. Right? That means the knowledge of political science, the knowledge that you are gathering here in political science, you can use even in polity. Right? It will help you in polity. Right? So this is one thing. So you can use this in polity. Alright. So the entire section A, it is about these concepts, the basic concepts. Right? As I said, the concept of power, right? The political ideologies, right? Ideologies. Then coming to Indian political thought. Right? So here again, we require the knowledge of Indian history. Remember, though we see what we call few words here, Buddhist philosophy, Jainism, right, and Dharma Shastras. That is, if we take Indian philosophy, right, Indian philosophy, the 6 philosophies, right, the philosophy of what we call Kautilya, that is Arthashastra. Alright, so here we require the knowledge of history to understand Indian political thought. Right? We require knowledge of history to understand Indian political thought. Similarly, Western political thought. Right? So in Western political thought, we will learn the Greek philosophy, the English philosophy, the what you call Western European countries like France and Italy. Right? People like Montesquieu, right? Then Rousseau, Machiavelli, right? Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, right? So these are the thinkers, right, from Western European countries like UK, or you take that is England, France, you take Italy, right? Along with the traditional Western political theories or traditional political thought, right? The Greek philosophy, right? Plato's, Aristotle's theory, the Socrates one, we should not forget Socrates, right? So we will try to understand, right, the Greek philosophy, that is the Greek thought, the English, the French, and the Italians, right? So section A deals with this. Section A deals with these topics, right? The best books for section A, the best books for section A is You Can Follow Political Theory. If you take the book list, of these topics, right? Political Theory by O.P. Goba. Political Theory by O.P. Goba. You can also follow the Western Political Thought. The Western Political Thought by it is up to you. Western Political Thought by O.P. Goba. Again the same author, O.P. Goba, and Subrata Mukherjee and Ramaswamy. So another good book is Subrata Mukherjee and Ramaswamy. But the problem here is, so Subrata Mukherjee seems to be abstract, right? It is more abstract in nature. That means for a new reader, it will be difficult to understand. So before reading these books, I would advise you to read 11th class NCERT, right? So there is a specific book, there is a separate book of political theory in 11th class NCERT, right? So read 11th class NCERT. So before going to these books, read 11th class NCERT, that is political theory. There is a separate book, that is political theory, alright. So also read the 10th class and the 9th class NCERT, that is democratic politics, alright. So before reading these books, alright, read NCERT books for political science. So these are the important books. These are the important NCERT books for political science. So first read these books, then go for O.P. Goba. You can read Subrata Mukherjee, right, for political thought and for political theory. So if you ask me, O.P. Goba is just enough for political theory, right? And O.P. Goba, right, is a separate book of O.P. Goba on Western political thought, right? And at the same time, you have Indian political thought. For Indian political thought, purchase the book of Verma, right? Indian political thought by Verma, right? And along with this, you can also refer IGNO MPS for political thought. Both for Indian political thought as well as for Western political thought, you can refer IGNO, Masters in Political Science, MPS, right? So it will be very helpful to you, right? So these are the books for what you call section A. These are the books for section A in paper 1. So section A in paper 1 is all about political theory and what you call political thought. Now coming to section B, alright, so we can simply call it as section B. So if you take this for section B, right, which is about Indian government and Indian politics. It is about Indian government and Indian politics, right. So out of 250 marks, right, out of 50 marks, right, 125 will be on political theory and political thought, and the remaining 125 will be on the Indian government and politics. So here you need to have the idea of modern India, the modern history or modern India, that is Indian national movement, right, the political strategies that are adopted during freedom struggle, the most, that is what you call the landmark moments, the important phases of Indian Indian freedom struggle. We take right from formation of Indian National Congress, then what you call the Swadeshi movement, or the political strategies that were adopted by the moderates or the extremists, the revolutionaries. So these are different strategies adopted, right. So right, and important personalities there, right. We talk about pro changers, no changers, right. So these are the things, civil disobedience movement, non-cooperation movement, the strategy that is adopted there, the views of different thinkers on these movements. So you should know about all these things, that is it requires an idea of modern India or Indian national movement. The one who are good in this, definitely. So this entire section B is about two things, one is history, second one is polity, alright. So this is one thing, alright. So different perspectives of Indian national movement. So it is application of political ideology. So from the point of liberal traditions, right, liberalism, from the stand of socialism, from the point of communism or Marxism, right. Then making of Indian constitutions, that is how Indian constitution came to existence, right, the different salient features, the goals of Indian constitutions, right, goals of constitution, the preamble, the salient features, right, the fundamental rights, the DPSP, right, the entire what you call the parliamentary system of government, the concept of amendments, the concept of basic structure. So the topics that we have discussed today in today's class, all right. So here again it is about Indian constitution, So for this part, all right, there are two books. So if you are already reading Rajiv Ahir, so Modern India by Rajiv Ahir, that is Spectrum Publications. All right, I think it is good enough, so don't do too much of research. So you can just follow Rajiv Ahir, that is Spectrum Modern India, or if you have time and patience, you can read Indian Freedom Struggle. And India After Independence by Penguin Publications, that is Bipin Chandra. Alright, so India After Independence and Indian Freedom Struggle. So these are two good books that gives you, idea about the political developments that took place after independence and during independence. So Penguin Publications, that is the book of Bipin Chandra, is good, alright. So but it is very bulky in nature, alright. It requires a selective reading, instead of reading the entire book, right, have a selective reading of this, what you call Indian Freedom Struggle by Bipin Chandra, alright. It will be helpful. And if you have what you call entire reading, and if you keep on reading the book, you will become a scholar but not a civil servant, alright. You will become a scholar but not a ranker. So ultimately our goal is to get a rank, our goal is to crack civil services, our goal is to get a rank, alright. So don't do too much of research. I always hate doing research in civils exam, alright. Don't waste time in doing research, alright. Now Coming to other part. Coming to other part. If you take this making of constitution, the very good book is Lakshmikant, Indian Polity by Lakshmikant. And if you have patience, do read D.D. Basu. D.D. Basu. So it is another good book for Indian polity. Right? So Rajiv Ahir or Bipin Chandra for what you call understanding political strategies or political developments during Indian freedom struggle. And for making of constitution, as usually the book that you are following for polity, that is Lakshmikant, and if you have time, read D.D. Basu. Right? These are things. Now coming to the next part of the syllabus. Right? As I said, it is different levels of principal organs of government, principal organs of state. So legislature, executive and judiciary. Right? Principal organs of the state. So whatever you are seeing here, whatever you are seeing this in political science, the same syllabus, it is just for 125 marks in political science, but the same thing in public administration, it is for 250 marks. Right? So here we will come to know the working of the legislature, the executive and the judiciary. Right? That means the same topics of polity, the topics that we are covering in polity, again it is done in political science also. There is no difference. The only thing is we keep on using ideologies. That we apply political theory. The difference between polity and political science. The difference between polity and political science is here we apply. It is application of political theory. It is application of political theory. It is application of what you call political ideologies. So we apply both theory and ideology. We apply both theory and ideology. Right? So at union, at state, at grassroots level, that is at Panchayat Raj level, the working of grassroots level democracy, the working of local bodies in India. Right? So this is what about section B. And apart from this, we even have certain issues. Right? We even have certain issues. That is the working of statutory organizations in India. The working of statutory organizations in India. Right? So if you take union government, state government and all these topics, it is even common for GS paper 2. It is common for GS paper 2. That means, alright, the political science optional will help you to answer all the 250 marks in GS paper 2. So the entire optional. So no need to have a separate preparation for GS paper 2 if you are if you take political science optional. If you take political science optional, you can cover entire 250 marks of GS paper 2. Alright. So it talks about the issues of federalism. Alright. That is the center-state relations, the changing dynamics of Federation of India, the changing dynamics of center-state relations in India. Alright. We will talk about the planning and economic development. Right? So the concept of planning, the concept of 5-year plans, different types of plans. Alright. So the progress made during these 5-year plans, right? So all these will be discussed, right? The impact of LPG on planning, right? So how planning system got evolved in India before 1991 and after 1991. So what is the difference between imperative planning, indicative planning, and how the coming of Niti Ayog, has changed the Indian planning system. Alright. So all this will be discussed. In this topics, right? That means here we even touch GS paper 3, the first chapter of GS paper 3. It is the first chapter of GS paper 3, all right? And issues of caste, religion, ethnicity, the social movements, right? Sorry, the issues of religion, caste, all right? Nature of party system, right? So if you take this first one, right, if you take this part, you can also find this in GS paper 1. You can find this in GS paper 1, right? GS paper 1, right? Federation, right? Communalism, that is the social problems of India, right? The social problems of Indian society. All right, coming to this party system, the kind of party system in India, on what basis parties are formed, right? So, recognition of political parties, functioning of political parties, different political parties in India, all right? So, how this, the evolution of party system in India, all right? And today we talk about multi-party system, all right? If you take Indian system, all right, it is the multi-party system, all right? That is coalition politics. So, how this coalition politics got evolved in India and how they got survived in India. So, evolution of political coalition politics, survival of coalition politics, right? So, role of different groups, pressure groups, right? Any group, any pressure group. So, the role of pressure groups on these political parties, right? The electoral behavior that we are seeing today, the electoral behavior. And we have seen the violence, the reason for violence during elections, a reason for low turnout in voting in urban areas. If you take urban areas, particularly in urban areas, the voting percentage is always low when compared to the rural areas. So, what is the reason for this? All right. So, we will analyze the electoral behavior. We will analyze the electoral behavior. All right. So, this is all we talk about, right? Social movements in what you call India, all right? So, the best book for this is B.L. Fadia, Indian Government and Politics, all right? You can have one single book, that is B.L. Fadia. All right? So, you can use this B.L. Fadia as a source to understand Indian government and politics, all right? You can just simply depend on this book of B.L. Fadia, okay? This is one thing. Now, this is about paper 1. Now, coming to paper 2, paper 2 is about comparative politics and international relations. So, there are two things. So, paper 2 is all about comparative politics. It is all about comparative politics and international relations, all right? So, here usage of comparative approach, all right? So, one of the essential feature of social sciences, is comparative approach. So, this comparative approach is mainly used in political science, in law and public administration. Comparative politics, comparative law and comparative public administration, all right? So, it is mainly used in this and it is one of the most important approach in political science, all right? So, here this comparative approach is used in analyzing the political economy and political sociology, right? Political economy, and we have different approaches to study political science. And political science has a linkage. It has linkage with other social sciences. It has linkage with sociology, it has linkage with philosophy, law, economy, all right? So, history, don't forget, history is the first thing, all right? So, it has links with all other social sciences. So how this knowledge of other social sciences can be used to understand politics, right? So we will talk about the political sociology, the political economy, right, and limitations within this comparative approach. To what extent comparative approach can really helpful in building a theory of politics or in building political theory. So ultimately remember, if you take this comparative politics or if you take comparative methods, comparative methods is a method, is an approach first to develop a theory, to develop a scientific theory, scientific political theory. So here we'll also try to understand why this why this comparative approach is used, why it is necessary, and what are the limitations for this, right? So comparative approach in understanding the state, the changing nature of state. So how the state got changed? You take tribal societies, the Roman Empire, right? The Greek societies, the modern nation states, right? So how this changes took place? So if you take evolution of state, it has passed through different stages. It has passed through different stages. So comparative approach is the best approach in analyzing the changing nature of state, right? Changing nature of state, right? In state in a different context. State in capitalist societies, state in communist societies, state in liberal societies. It is, we have different perspective. But here, if you are good in paper 1, definitely it will be very easy to understand all these things. If you take the first chapter, I'm just giving the example, right? Theories of state. In the first chapter itself, we will come to know different perspectives of state. That is, we will use different ideologies to understand the state. And it is this perspective which will help you in paper 2. Alright? It is this perspective which will help you in paper 2. Alright? So, that means what? So, comparative approach in understanding the evolution of state, changing nature of state, and not only this, right, even in the present day system, right, I'll take just a simple example. In the present contemporary world, right, we can best use this comparative approach to compare the political system of one country with the other country. We can analyze the change in the nature of political system, in the nature of state, how India is getting changed, how African nations are changing, how Western countries are changing. So we can compare all these countries, we can analyze the nature of change, right? So, politics of representation and participation, that is role of pressure groups in the political system, right? So we have different groups involving, and today if we take the political parties, right, political parties are formed based upon this common interest of the group members. So we have religion based political parties, region based political parties, right? Then we have political parties based upon caste, political parties based upon the workers or the worker unions. Today we have CPI, CPM, the communist parties, right? The regional parties, the communal parties, right? So we will try to understand why these political parties comes out and what will be their main agenda, and how these political parties, what kind of strategies, what kind of approaches, instruments that these political parties will use in achieving their own goals, Alright? So that is what politics of representation. That is what politics of representation, right? Politics of participation. So this is section A. Remember, whatever we are discussing, it is section A of paper 2. Section A of paper 2, it revolves around this comparative politics. So this is section A and this is section B. So remember, if we can clearly divide this, it will be easy for us to prepare for the exam, right? If you have a clear idea of this syllabus and if you can clearly divide the syllabus, definitely we can have a selective preparation. We can have selective preparation. That is in section A of paper 2, section A of paper 1, where to focus, how many topics to be focused, whether to read entire syllabus or not, can we skip? Because in optional we have the chance of using choice, right? In optional subjects we have the choice, so we can leave some of the questions in choice. So that means we can have a selective approach. We can have a selective approach for mains, particularly in optional, right? So when you can divide the syllabus, it will be easy for you. It will be easy for you to clearly analyze and what you call have a preparation, right? You can have a selective preparation, all right? So this is what section A, all right? Right? Coming to section B, it is international relations. It is international relations, that is different approaches to understand international relations. The liberal approach, the Marxist approach, the critical approach, right? The feminist approach, even we have a gender perspective, right? Right? A gender perspective, a critical approach in understanding political relations, all right? So approaches to understand politics, right? The key concepts of international relations, that is what is nation, what is national interest, what is internationalism, what is multinationalism, right? What are different types of actors, right? So we all see these words of balance of power, deterrence, right? Why countries, say for example, why countries should spend, simple example, a very layman topic, why government should spend more on defense? Though they are not involved in direct wars, though the countries are not involved in direct wars, but still countries spend more on defense, all right? Military spendings, right? It is because of, right? It is because every country want to maintain minimum deterrence power. Every country want to maintain, every country want this minimum deterrence so that it can safeguard the national interest. So why deterrence is used? It is ultimately to safeguard a national interest, right? So right, nowadays no country shows interest in fighting wars except because of few superpowers or because of the self interest of few countries, right? There are wars, but still no what you call a developed country or no country want to fight a war, because war is waste of resources. So it is deterrence, it is not just in the form of defense, but even today we are talking about economic powers, economic superpowers. All right. So in 1960s and 1970s, that is during the Cold War era, focus was on maintaining this military power and military might. All right. Arsenals, nuclear powers. But today it is not about military, it is about economy. It is about economic hegemony or economic supremacy. All right. So it is this economic hegemony that is the reason to maintain deterrence. All right. So changing international political system or international political order. All right. So the rise of superpowers after Second World War, the Cold War era, the global political situation during Cold War era. All right. So the kind of, just now I was talking about this kind of arms race. All right. So the nuclear treaties, say for example we have nuclear threats, START, all right, Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, right? So, and on one hand we see rise of superpowers, on the other hand the newly emerged countries, the third world countries, right? So the role played by third world countries, how they got organized themselves, particularly you take NAM, right? So NAM is such an organization, NAM is an organization which is meant to protect the interest of third world countries, right, during the competition between the superpowers. Remember, norm got emerged in a scenario, in a situation when there is a bitter conflict between the two superpowers, and these third world countries, they were sandwiched in this what you call superpowers. So to protect their own national interest, right, to protect themselves from this what you call pressures, they have organized themselves into what you call a group called as NAM. So we have Afro-Asian Conference, Bandung Conference, a pre-runner of non-aligned movement. Alright. Then another important event, the collapse of Soviet Russia after, that is disintegration of Russia after 1988, and the impact of this disintegration of Russia on the entire globe. And even today we see this. Impact of Soviet Russia. Alright, impact of disintegration of Soviet Russia. Alright. So evolution of different international institutions. Today we talk about World Bank, IMF, the Bretton Woods institutions, and how these Bretton Woods institutions, how these global institutions, particularly the global financial and economic institutions, their pressure on the nation states. Today, every nation state is under influence of one or the other global institution, right? So how these global institutions have changed the global world order, right? Coming to the role of different organizations, right? So global organizations like UN, regional organizations. Today we talk about SAARC, right? ASEAN, then what you call IBSA, and we have what you call all these organizations forming, alright, Shanghai Cooperation Organizations, then BRICS, alright. The contemporary issues, say for example, the contemporary issues like the ongoing wars, the impact of war on the human rights, the issue of migration, right. So recently, right, the British government, the UK government took a decision of deporting all the immigrants from Britain, right. So the issue of migrants, the issue of human rights, right. So these are different issues, with different burning issues, right. The reforms of UN, right. So a long pending reforms of United Nations, particularly the UN Security Council, alright. So these are different issues which need to be discussed, or which are to be talked about, right. Then coming to India and world, right, coming to the India and world, right, it is Indian foreign policy. Coming to Indian foreign policy, the India's bilateral relations, the multilateral relations, right. So India's membership in different regional organizations, right. So we will discuss all this in second paper, right. So for paper 2, for comparative politics, read Johari. Alright, for global politics, that is for international order or international relations, for global politics, read Andrew Haywood. And for Indian foreign policy, you can read Rajiv Sikri, right? You can read International Relations by P.U. Ghosh. Even this is a good book for international relations as well as India and world. That is for India and other global India and bilateral relations. Alright. So you can read P.U. Ghosh, you can read Rajiv Sikri. Alright. And even the book of David Malone. Malone, David Maloney, right. So these are good books, for GS paper 2, political science paper 2. So Johari, Andrew Haywood, Rajiv Sikri, P.U. Ghosh, David Malone's right? But anyhow, so I have listed so many books. For political science, there are so many books to be read. So anyhow, you will be given the class notes, you will be given the printed notes, right? So printed notes, right, which is made from all these textbooks. So you can read the notes given in the class. It will be very helpful to your exam. And after every chapter, we will discuss the previous year's questions which are asked in UPSC mains. After every chapter, we will discuss the PYQs asked in UPSC. All right. So this is about what you call the syllabus of political science, and the regular classes on political science starts from 24th of this month. And the classes will be held on Zoom. The interested candidates, they can call to the number that is given. It is 9160-571-483. You can call, you can get enrolled. All right, for this class. Okay. So this is about the syllabus and the book list of political science. So for now, I stop the class. So we will meet in next session. And for any queries, you can just dial this number 9160-571-483. Right. Thank you.